All righty. Well, Steve, welcome. Appreciate that you're
Thank you.
joining us. All right. Let's dive in and learn a little bit more about you. So, how many years have you been performing now?
How many I can't remember. It's 41. I think this year is 41. 41 years.
Wow.
41
Amazing.
years, and that would be with my own band. That's not counting the years that I was practicing and playing with my dad's band.
Okay, I was just going
Before
to ask that. Okay.
Um,
Wow, amazing. Now, obviously, you followed in your father's footsteps.
I do have to say, wait a minute.
Oh, yep.
I do have to say, the one man that inspired me to really be a better accordion player, well, there's several of those too, but the one man that started me when I was a kid was Joey Miskell. Because nobody could play like that. It was like it was like a godly thing. I mean, nobody could play like that. You weren't born and you could play like that.
Yeah.
I mean, he was the first guy, and of course, he was always such a nice guy and always gave good advice. So
yeah, no, he is a great guy. I had the pleasure of meeting him a couple years ago at the Illinois Polka Fest, and really, really great
he's
guy.
one of a kind.
Yeah,
they broke the mold when they made that kid.
Yep. All right. Well, obviously, you've followed in your father's footsteps by being the great performer you are and filling those shoes.
Hey, I never been called a great performer yet. That's a good one.
No. And many will even say you filled those shoes and then some. How would you say, or what do you feel you've done that has taken you beyond just filling those shoes?
My dad was like a self-contained. I think of him as a genius, but he was self-contained.
Okay.
I mean, he didn't, even though he may have looked at outside music, I look at him like I would look at some of the great composers where everything became internalized. So, I mean, even if he looked at other genres or other music, it all became him. I mean, he turned everything that he did into Steve Meisner.
Okay.
I, on the other hand, look at things differently. I mean, I look for those inspirations in other things, and I don't like to take away from those inspirations.
Gotcha.
It still probably turns out ending up the same, where it still sounds like me, but at the same time, I try to at least, respect where I've taken ideas from, and maybe I'm not quite as internalized, I don't think, musically. It doesn't all have to be about me.
Right.
I mean, I can play, Yankovic, or I could play Joey Miskell, or I could play Eddie Blazonczyk, or I could play, and I can leave it at that. Okay. It doesn't have to be my interpretation of it. I'm more honored if I can have somebody say, "Oh, you're playing an Eddie Blazonczyk number. Wow, that's really cool, Steve." I'm more honored by that than if they would say, "Well, what the hell was that?"
That's awesome. Do you read music or do you play by ear?
I have always, I was taught to read. I choose not to. My ear has always guided me through muddy waters. Reading, I read music as fast as I read a book.
Okay.
Very slow. Very slow. And I don't know. To me, I always thought there was a relationship there. There's a reason for it. If you're a slow reader of a book, you're going to be a slow reader of music. I mean, to me, it's not one measure at a time. It's one note at a time. And it slows the whole process down. My ear just goes boom. I hear it, and I'm already on the next page before my eyes are still wasting all that time trying to catch up. My ears has already taken me to the next page. So,
and I feel too. Also playing by ear, you're playing from your heart as well, not just.
No. I mean, but that's a different subject. Okay. Because even if you read, you play from your heart. But
Okay.
playing by ear is something that you truly is a developed thing. I mean, it's just as
You
developed
can
as
be more
perfect
creative.
pitch and everything else. But it's just the ear always took me places faster than you remember when. Did you ever have to vacuum your carpet?
Sure.
I mean, when you were a kid, did your mother make you vacuum?
Of course.
Of course. So did you ever spend a lot of time while you were vacuuming? You didn't want to vacuum, but you spent a lot of time trying to practice your perfect pitch with a vacuum cleaner.
No.
That's what I did the whole time I vacuumed. My ear was always going like, and I'd be humming with it, trying to get the perfect pitch with a vacuum cleaner. That's when I
Okay.
started realizing that, hey, my ear goes so much farther than my eyes can read in time. And I will say in some cases, I mean, it has slowed me down in some things. I mean, there's so much, and again, like discipline, there's so many other things I would really musically thought when I was younger, man, I'd really like to do some of this stuff. But I did take time when I was young, reading different kinds of books, like accordion books for Bach and, playing, this really weird stuff with basses. And I mean, but again, it's a whole day of just reading one song, and practicing that stuff. And after I played it, after reading it and playing it, I didn't need the sheet music anymore. I'm like, okay, now I know how this damn thing goes. I can hear it. I know where the basses go. I'm like, if you had just played it for me first, I had this thing down 10 minutes ago,
Yeah, yeah. So it sounds like this this isn't a hobby of yours. You're a full-time musician.
Full-time musician, but it's still a hobby.
Yeah.
Still a hobby because, I mean, you're having too much fun, right?
Sure.
It's not work. It's not work. Setting up and tearing down, driving to the gig. I always tease uh, poor Ted Lang.
Yeah.
Because he became a bus driver.
Nobody else can drive it now.
I always tease him about that. But you know what? I mean, in all the years that I played, it's like the real work is driving, getting to the gigs, setting up, tearing down, playing a gig. That's not work.
Right.
That's where you have all the fun.
That's where you have fun.
For sure.
That's for sure. So Wisconsin sounds like a fun place to play. Obviously, you've got all the festivals, county and state fairs going on, as well as your bars and supper clubs. Where are some of your favorite places that you've played in the United States?
Oh, my gosh. I wish you wouldn't ask that. The only reason is because it's not, they're all favorite. I mean, it's every job is an experience. Every gig you play at, it doesn't matter how small it is, if it's at Kohanski's Tavern downtown Milwaukee, or if it's playing at Polish Fest in Milwaukee. I mean, how large, how small, it doesn't matter. I mean, they're all fun. And the one thing that I learned, and I learned this through experience, was you make your own gig fun. You make it fun.
Yep.
You start the gig and you make it fun. It's about the people. It's about who's there. Doesn't matter if there's 10 or if there's 10,000. You have a good time and you make it fun. I couldn't even name all of the places anymore that I played. In fact, somebody says, "You remember when you played there?" And I'm like, "Yeah, no, I don't." Like, I have pictures of you playing there, Steve. I'm like, oh boy. Now, my dad, on the other hand, he had a photographic memory. Miskillen and Frank Yankovic. I mean, they remember everything.
Sure.
I mean, how cool would that be if you could remember everything?
Yeah.
I'm not that fortunate. The good times I try to remember. I don't remember the bad times, just the good.
Definitely, definitely. So what do you think sets you apart in polka music?
Not sure I'm set apart. Am I?
Well, your own style,
In my eyes, I mean, my father was an individual. he made his livelihood on being an individual.
Mhm.
And that's just a natural process. I learned, from him. And one of the things I think that I would always go back to is that he always told me, you've got all of these copycats out there that are trying to sound like other, you know. And he always told me, he said, Steve, he said, don't try and sound like me. Don't try and sound like Agabek. Try and sound like, Pecan or Habit. He said, be yourself. Try to be yourself in your music. Sound like yourself. And so that's one thing. And he told me that at a pretty young age. So, that's one thing that I always carry with me.
So you've traveled around the United States, and being on the road myself, I've encountered some crazy experiences. Can you tell us about the funniest or the wackiest road experience you've ever had?
In like a minute? No. I mean, and there's so many. I mean, where would I start?
Oh yeah, oh definitely. I mean, but as many years as you've
There's
been around,
so many. Where would I start? One of the weirdest, I want to say, scariest road experience I ever had was, you're on the road, you break down once in a while, right?
Oh, definitely.
And my dad was a very get it done guy. It's like, well, we're not going to sit around here and wait, for AAA to pick us up. So we stopped we were on the Ohio-Indiana border, coming back from the East Coast. And the last oasis in Ohio, we pulled over for gas. The van was on E. Okay. Drive it. And it was going to be my turn to drive the rest of the trip back to Wisconsin. And filled her up, but the van wouldn't start. And I'm thinking to myself, this is really strange, wouldn't start. And feathering the gas. And this is, back in the old days when a vehicle had a fuel pump.
Right.
So it was a regular carburetor with a fuel pump. And I was feathering it, and I could keep it running if I kept feathering the gas pedal. And I told him, I said, Dad, I think the fuel pump is shot. And I got underneath, and sure enough, the diaphragm was leaking underneath the van, and it was leaking gas. Diaphragm.
Oh, no.
And it was amazing because he drove all the way from Jessup, Maryland to this point.
Yep.
Before all of a sudden the fuel pump is going, right? And he thought he was out of gas. Well, he was out of gas, but I mean, for some odd reason, the fuel pump is, not working either. So he says to me, he says, well, let's take the doghouse off. He says, I'll go buy a gallon jug of windshield washer. I'll dump it out. We'll fill it with gas. Take the doghouse off. Take the air cleaner cover off. And he says, you keep feathering it. And when it starves for gas, I'll dump gas into the carburetor. And he says, we'll get down to the next exit where there's a carburetor. He says, otherwise, we got to sit here for an hour and a half to pick us up.
Right.
And of course, I'm young, I'm foolish. I'm like, and my dad said so. So I'm like, okay, I guess we'll try it, right?
Yep.
Mind you, the whole 5-piece band is in the van, right? All the instruments are in the van. And it starts out good. And we get back out on the turnpike. And we're going, I'm feathering, and I'm going about 50, feathering the gas, doing pretty good.
Yeah.
He only dumps it in when he hears it starve, right? Only dumps gas in when he hears it starve. Well, I hit a bump in the road.
Uh-oh.
At the same time, it was starving, and he was dumping gas in and overspilled the gasoline. And so it poured too much gasoline into the carburetor, and the engine backfired,
Oh,
and the whole thing started on fire.
oh no.
I pulled over right away off to the side of the road, right? Pulled over right away to the side of the road. And we're looking for rags. We're trying to put the van is off, but it's still on fire because gas poured into the air cleaner around the outside. We're trying to put this out. The whole dash is melted on the van, and we're still trying to put the fire out. All of the guys in the back, they're all out of the van. They already have all their instruments out of the back of the van.
Yeah.
And they're like a mile away. They walked away from and they're like a football field away, waiting for the van to blow up, right? And Dan and I are putting it out, and then I walk around the van on the side, traffic's going by on the turnpike, and I'm standing there by the guardrail, and I'm so scared. I'm bouncing up and down. I'm trying to stand still, but I'm bouncing up and down like this. I'm like, can we call AAA now? And he says, are you crazy? He says, get back in the van. He says, we're going to get to this exit. And the guys wouldn't get back in the van. None of the band guys would get, and they're walking with their instruments down the turnpike.
Oh,
and
wow.
Dan and I get back in the van, and we get started again. The dash is all melted. All the vacuum lines are melted, And we get back in the van, and we're going on. And we get to the exit. And I had to roll down the window to throw the coin in the slot to get through. I barely stopped. Thank God there was no gate. It was just a light. I threw the coin in and we drove right through. And I feathered it, kept it going until I got to the parts store in the town, which was right off of the turnpike, right? And I shut it off. And I said to Dad, I said, okay, go buy the fuel pump. I drove a Dodge van too, and I changed the fuel pumps before. And so I said, I know how to change this. We got the tools in the back. I said, I can have this apart in a half hour. I said, I'll have the new fuel pump put on. I said, you go to the gas station across the street and get somebody to take you back to the turnpike to get the fellas. And so as he was getting with the guy from the gas station, as they're going through the gates at the turnpike, the band members are walking through on the other side, walking through the gate, So everybody gets there. We get back in the van, and we got back to Wisconsin. No trouble. But I mean, that was the scariest road trip I know, and the funniest because, and this was his original sax player Bill Hageman and Gary Hendrickson from Monroe on the banjo guitar, and who was drumming? I want to say that was probably. Maybe Chris Dozak when he was really little. But anyway, I'll never forget those guys walking down the turn. Oh, the funny part of that story is that Bill Hageman said, yeah, he says, we're walking down the turnpike. And he says, we get over the ridge in the turnpike, over the knoll and the hill. And he says, this sign comes up, off the side of the turnpike that says fireworks for sale. He said, we thought we were going to see the van blow up out in, by the signboard, got the fireworks. Yeah, that was a funny story. Yeah, there's so many.
Oh, yeah. Spend a whole night talking about those. That's for sure.
Yeah, my goodness, for sure.
So, Steve, tell me, where do you see polkas in 10 years?
I don't know. We got to get past this year.
Yeah, that's for sure.
It's really hard when your whole life is stifled.
Yeah.
By what's happening around us. The one thing I will say is that I'm very optimistic, and the one thing about polka music is resilient.
Yeah.
It's a music that has nothing to do with anything but fun.
Right.
It's resilient. It's going to come around. People are going to miss it. People are going to want to have it. In fact, I don't know. I always said that the one thing, because of the resilience of polka music, it takes many shapes and many forms. And we've watched it grow into different kinds of different genres of polka music that I never dreamed even existed.
Sure.
I just always said that was the problem, with polka music from day one, is that there's no union. of all of it together in a mass of all the genres of, everybody getting together and working together. And, that's one thing that all the music that was probably closest to polka music was bluegrass music.
Right.
And that was a form of music that had the same problem polka music had. No union in it. It was all split apart. Well, they figured out how to all get together and became a part of Nashville. And the ones who stayed in the business and learned the business became, very successful and, have had, successful recording careers and crossovers into country music and yada, yada. And polka music could do the same thing.
All right. Well, that's all I've got for you, Steve. I appreciate your time.
I don't think you'll have enough time for all of that. So run this
oh, yeah.
in your show. You'll have enough for all of that.